हमारी बोर्ड मेंबर भी है और बहुत साल से जागोरी की डायरेक्टर भी रही और बहुत ही हमारा एक क्लोज कॉमरेड और लविंग रिलेशनशिप रहा है उनके साथ। महावीर।
Salam, Zindabad, hello Jagorians and all dear friends who are in Delhi to celebrate Jagori's special 40th year journey. It has been such an honor to be part of Jagori. Sitting far away, I'm trying to recall the many beautiful moments of close to 3.5 decades of a journey with Jagori. I recall how the doors of Jagori were opened to me by Kamla and Abha initially. I was new to Delhi, and the doors of this collective space have always been kept open by all the women friends that came to Jagori. I'm grateful for the mentoring of the founder board members, general body members, co-travelers, as also for the time that I spent in co-nurturing this space. 40 years ago, the world was indeed a different place. It was a place of dreams, of equality, freedom, peace, making one's own space, building new grounds, building a new voice. This sacred space of Jagori was not only a beautiful space, it was a difficult space as well. A space where many questions were raised, where there was rage against gender and social injustices and rights violations. I recall the many moments being on the streets with Jagorians demonstrating against fundamentalism, sexual violence, nuclearization, communalism, standing in support with the global movement of women in black, in support of the film Fire, in support of LGBT rights, and so on. I vividly recall co-organizing the bus ride to Jaipur in support of the National March in solidarity with Bhavri Devi and many other such moments of solidarity. Jagori and Sangat were both spaces of intense learning, of discovering one's fractured identity, of experimenting, building bridges, and intergenerational care. It gave me the confidence to speak up, to be fearless, to combine passion, compassion, and to honor sisterhood. It taught me body, sexuality, and economic literacy, feminist pedagogy, feminist campaigning with songs, slogans, banners, learning how to march on the streets with confidence and mobilizing all those across the streets at that time. Jagori and Sangat also brought together an amazing feminist constellation from across South Asia and the larger globe in building solidarity, celebrating gains, taking on challenges, questioning misogyny and authoritarianism. I especially recall the 20-year celebrations that Jagori held in Delhi with songs, performances, and much more, bringing friends from across the border. It was a time when new thoughts flourished, diverse voices emerged, mindsets expanded. Kamla's slogans, songs, writings lined every sky. Thank you, Kalpana, Manjima, Geeta, Jaya, for celebrating this day and for getting us all together. Thank you to the Jagori veterans, to board and general body members, and to all Jagorians from across the years that I have journeyed with. You have taught me much, and that too with such grace and humility. I salute each one of you in Delhi as you celebrate these unique moments of sisterhood and renew your dreams of building another world. I look forward to the next 40 years. Zindabad.
Thank you, Sunita. We're missing Sunita here hugely. One more little video from Edda Karlis, who has worked with Bread for the World and Miseriora funders since the beginning, and another very close comrade.
Feminist solidarity. Congratulations. I'm very honored to speak on this occasion, and I'm sorry that I can't be with you in Delhi. Personally, I'm looking back at 30 years of traveling together with Jagori. Jagori's feminist journey has always been a journey questioning unjust power structures, starting from the women's movement, but quickly moving beyond women's rights to a larger framework of structural injustice and the need to change societal systems on all levels. From the personal to the international level, everything is political. Some of the founders of Jagori have been midnight children, a generation of women deeply influenced by a sense of building a new post-colonial society, whose energy and commitment, I believe, has a great impact also on further generations of Jagori activists. When Jagori reached out for partnership with NGOs from abroad, they found feminist women of a similar generation in the church-based NGO donor organizations EZE, Bread for the World, and Miserio, who have been compassionate in building a just, feminist, and anti-fascist society in post-World War II Germany. Activists from similar generations with similar feminist agendas from two countries met and used our respective institutional frameworks to collectively strive for our vision of feminist justice and peace. From inception, the partnership was not just about project funding, but about social change. At the same time, there was a deep personal interest among the colleagues in Germany to understand the dynamics of Indian society, and a great openness among the colleagues of Jagori to share. I believe that this personal commitment, leading to trust and friendship, was core to make a long-term partnership between institutions in Germany and Jagori possible. The common feminist agenda of the individuals rather than institutions allowed for overcoming colonial mindsets. And the institutions in Germany were flexible enough to leave the agenda setting to Jagori, but also to support beyond a mere project mode of cooperation. This was meant to be a common journey and partnership over decades. In a unique cooperation in the 1990s, Jagori came forward to provide gender training and accompaniment to many Indian partner organizations of the Protestant development agencies in Germany. And this was a collective initiative. What can we learn from this journey of international solidarity? Today, in an ever more capitalist and postmodern world, solidarity is being challenged. Capitalism produces and requires individualism and alienation. Postmodernism promotes the importance of diversity, allows for submerged and discriminated against identities to claim recognition. It questions and deconstructs any collective social category, such as women or class, as socially constructed. While postmodern understanding might be theoretically correct and important to recognize, it may hamper collective action and therefore indirectly support divisions, mistrust, disempowerment, and maintenance of existing unjust power structures and systems. It can easily play into the hands of capitalist divisive interests who already find new marketing strategies emerging through newly emerging identities. However, there are ways out. Standpoint theory, developed as a concept for postmodern feminist solidarity by Sandra Harding, allows us to deconstruct identities, but to take a conscious decision to take a certain position, irrespective of personal societal positions. I can move into the shoes of another person who experiences discrimination and, based on this, join a feminist position along with many others, irrespective of whether I identify as a woman or not, whether I'm from Germany or India. I need to identify with the pain of another person and try to understand the power mechanisms producing such pain. Many different mechanisms may intersect. Thus, collective platforms may become possible again, based on a collective standpoint, analysis of power relations, vision, and agenda. Solidarity can and needs to be constructed on such a basis. One of the many impressive, innovative, and beautiful posters of Jagori has always been my favorite. It shows a brick wall and says in 3 Indian languages, "I'm not the wall that divides, I'm a crack in that wall." Maybe because I'm from Germany, where overcoming walls has become part of our history. No, there is much more to it. It illustrates that there is a continued need to overcome divides and nurture spaces where we can come together, however tiny these spaces may be. A small crack has the potential to become the basis for solidarity, even all the way to international level. I hope and trust that we all continue our journey to collectively crack the many walls that are built today in order to divide us and to rule. My love and solidarity are with you for this conference and the next 40 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eda. And with that, we move into the next panel, which is titled Aya Narivad Aya, Forging Solidarities Through Collective Knowledge Production. So the search for women's voices and making visible their different realities has motivated many efforts, many types of efforts at learning and producing knowledge with those affected themselves. And so this panel reflects on these processes as central to knowledge building. I would like to invite up Amrita Nandi, who will be moderating this panel. Amrita. I would like to also invite Meena Seshu, who is our panelist, and Shampa Sengupta, Beena Palikal, Jaya Velankar, and Dipta Bhog. Please come up on the stage. I'm going to briefly, very briefly share your affiliations and not go too much into the IDs. Dipta has worked on gender and education for close to 3 decades. She's co-founded Nirantar, which is a center for gender and education in Delhi. She was instrumental in initiating Khabar Lahariya, which started as a newspaper in 2002. And right now she's with the Third Eye, where she leads the Hindi publishing partnerships and outreach. And she's conceptualized the Caseworkers Dictionary of Violence. Jaya is the present director of Jagori, and she's been working on gender issues for over 40 years. Jaya is, she's part of setting up the Sukoon counseling centers for women survivors of violence in public hospitals in 5 districts in Haryana. And Jaya, in her personal time, enjoys music, literature, wildlife, and photography. Meena is working as the General Secretary of Sampada Gramin Mahila Sanstha, Sangram, which is a health and human rights organization working in rural areas of Western Maharashtra and Northern Karnataka. Meena supports and mentors the National Network of Sex Workers and is also a founder member of the Sex Workers and Allies South Asia, SWASA, which is a regional platform dedicated to amplifying voices of sex workers and advocating for decriminalizing of sex work. Shampa is a Kolkata-based activist working on the issue of disability and gender rights for the last 4 decades also. A special educator by training, she's the founder director of Shruti Disability Rights Center. Beena Palikal is a Dalit women leader and currently General Secretary of the National Campaign on Dalit Human Rights, where she's been for the last 14 years. She's been working towards policy changes within central and state governments towards demanding that Dalit women be included in policy formulation. Have I left anyone out? Amrita is a visiting faculty member at the National Law School of India, University Bangalore, and she teaches also at Ambedkar University, Delhi. Amrita is a long-time friend of Jagori, and she's, in the recent past, she's also helped coordinate and work on an action research on shelter homes and their residents. Amrita, I hand over to you to run this.
Thank you, Manjima. Hi, everyone. जैसे सुबह मंजिमा ने कहा था कि फेमिनिस्ट सॉलिडारिटी बिल्डिंग के 3 पिलर्स हैं, तो हम पहले पिलर से ये शुरुआत कर रहे हैं जो नॉलेज प्रोडक्शन का पिलर है कि कैसे हम सॉलिडारिटी बिल्ड करते हैं. हाउ डू वी रियली, although we aspire for solidarity building, but like Runudi was saying in the morning, that's a very messy and a tough job. But research and knowledge, शोध एक तरीका है उस सॉलिडारिटी तक पहुंचने का, और ये पैनल अब हमें दिखाता है of the diversities that make up for this solidarity, and therefore the differences that we're trying to pull together, and that very diverse plural conversation that we want to pull along. So I'll just very quickly do some table setting for this conversation. ये conversation, ये बातचीत हमारी इतिहास, हमारे अतीत, हमारा आज और हमारा कल, उन सबको टच करेगी और उसमें कई हम पॉइंटर्स लाने की कोशिश करेंगे. और नॉलेज प्रोडक्शन, ये हैवी टर्म, एक्चुअली हम इसे अपनी आम भाषा में ऑफिसेज में हम इसे रिपोर्ट, केस स्टडी, ऑडिट्स और जागोरी की कल हमने जो बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग, बहुत क्रिएटिव नोटबुक, अल्फ़ाबेट नोटबुक देखी, वो इस तरह के फॉर्म्स लेता है नॉलेज प्रोडक्शन. But feminist knowledge production actually goes beyond just closing gaps on the absence of knowledge. It complicates things for all of us. We have to turn inwards, not just outwards. We put on the table our own elitism, our privilege, our power. We bring that up in our research. It's less theoretical and more experiential. It's more subjective than objective. And can also be very extractive. Research, by its nature, can be very extractive. So these are some of the things that we'll talk about. Some of the difficult questions, जिनकी ज़्यादा हम बातचीत कर नहीं पाते, उस पे भी हम आज समय बिताने वाले हैं. मैं 3 चीज़ें कहना चाहूँगी इससे पहले कि पहला सवाल पूछूँ. 3 सवाल हैं. पहला कि इफ़ पॉसिबल हम हिंदी में बात करेंगे, बट रियली इट्स नॉट एन इम्पोजिशन. दोनों भाषाओं में अगर बात कर सकते हैं अच्छा है, अगर नहीं दैट्स ऑल्सो फाइन. हम समय we'll have about 5 minutes for each speaker, and also I'll go alphabetically, but Jaya will go last because Jaya is hosting this. Host last में खाना खाते हैं, वो वेट करते हैं सब गेस्ट खा लें. So Jaya will speak last, but otherwise we'll go alphabetically. So I'll move to the first question. पहला सवाल, ये जो 2 pillars हैं, feminist solidarity और knowledge production, जिसे research या शोध भी हम कहते हैं, इन दोनों के बीच का जो bridge है, what is the bridge, the pull that connects these two? And there are various ways of answering this question. You can talk about why you chose certain specific research subjects, what were the processes, what are the processes and the strategies that you followed for some research. And if feminist solidarities actually are need to build them, to strengthen feminist solidarities, was it really ever an intention? हम जब research करते हैं, हम सोचते हैं ये feminist solidarity की तरफ जाएगा. That's one of our goals. ऐसा क्या सोचते हैं? Is it an intentional thing? These 3 sub-questions you could answer with these 3 sub-questions, or in any way, in any which way you like. It's a very broad question. So I'll start, जैसे मैंने कहा, alphabetically start करने वाले हैं. It's always less controversial. तो पहला सवाल, पहले बीना, फिर दीप्ता, मीना, शोम्पा and Jaya last. So Beena, your turn.
Thank you so much, Amrita. I was just thinking in the last few days after I got the call from Jaya that what should we talk about knowledge production coming from a community that has been almost killed because of going to school, or community that was almost at the margins, were never allowed to go to school. जब अम्बेडकर जी ने ही जब स्कूल गए थे तो उनको भी बाहर बिठा के पढ़ाया गया था. वहाँ से उन्होंने उनका संघर्ष शुरू किया था. तो मैं यहाँ बैठ के मैं सोच रही थी कि मैं क्या बोलूँ नॉलेज प्रोडक्शन पे और ओनरशिप ऑफ दैट नॉलेज एज वेल. And over the years we have seen, and I'd like to bring one example here of, I don't know, many of you must have heard of Shailaja Paik, who's a Dalit author and historian, who recently won a $800,000 prize, a flexible fund, what she can do, whatever she wants to do with that money, from the MacArthur Foundation. When she got that prize, award, everybody was so, there was so much of negative remark against her identity, against where she comes from, against why she's doing what she does. And for us, it was a big shock, because for us it was, we wouldn't do that if it was a woman
who, you know, from a dominant caste who won an award, we'd be okay, happy. Maybe we'll say, okay, the knowledge production is in the hands of a few, and I still think that is true today. But the fact that there was so much of casteist remarks against her to point to her and to also break her dignity, to say that, you know, you're here only because of your social location. That is the kind of abuse that we face, despite the fact that we are talented, despite the fact that she's written so many books, she's a professor in one of the universities, काफ़ी कुछ उन्होंने किया है उनकी ज़िंदगी में. फिर भी जब ये अवार्ड मिला था तब भी उनको यही कहा गया कि रिमाइंडेड हर, उनको याद दिलाया गया है कि वो कौन से कास्ट से है और उनका सोशल लोकेशन कहाँ पे है. हम लोग, और ये इंडिया में नहीं है, दिस इज इन द यूएस, सो यू कैन इमेजिन that how bad it will be in India itself. Over the years, if you look at feminist writings and especially looking at intersectional writing or Dalit feminists, I can trace a lot of women, you know, Kumud Pawar is there, many are there, I mean, I can go on naming. But the point is that when we actually go to Google, or if we go to Google names of Dalit writings, the first pop-ups are not from the Dalit women themselves, but the pop-ups are of other writers, and no offense, come up, who have done their research on our lives, which, okay, at one point, maybe that was necessary, but over the last 20 years, that has changed, and slowly, slowly, women, younger women, because of social media, are coming up. They, you know, many times when we talk about aspirations. In India, we have, what is this, aspirational districts, where हमें देखना है कि क्या ये कहाँ जाना है आज से लेकर 10 साल बाद. If you ask aspirations of young Dalit children, it's not about, you know, becoming the president of the country or the prime minister or ministers. It's simple thing, मुझे बस school जाना है. So what aspirations are we talking about? Are we talking about the fact that, you know, these children, I want to see, you know, I have a dream that I want to see young girls. It's great to see, you know, the President of India who looks like me, who speaks, you know, coming from the Adivasi community. But then it stops there. She's not even invited to the, you know, inaugural of the Parliament building. So I think somewhere over the years, slowly that has changed, but the pace at which it should have changed, the pace at which more and more authors from the community should have been allowed to write, should have been given that kind of space. And I think it's really important that, congratulations to Jagori for 40 years. But I think one of the things that we as a movement, as a feminist movement, have to reflect that, is this space really intersectional? And I'm not talking about Jagori, but in general. Is the feminist space intersectional? Have we been able to give leadership to women from other communities? I think it's important, some of these questions, while Sunita Dhar, and I really appreciate that she said she's waiting for the next 40 years. And I think these are some of the critical questions that we need to ask ourselves. Maimuna is here, and I was also thinking that how many minority women are there, you know. So I think these are some questions that we need to ask ourselves. And building solidarity, just one, and then I hand it back. Building solidarity does not mean that you do your work on my life and then move on. I think building solidarity, and that's what we as Dalit women are always asking, that building solidarity means, how is your work going to reflect on my life? And how is your work going to enable me and my leadership and the community's leadership as you move forward with your work? So we're not saying don't do the work. We're saying how is that going to enable and support the women on the ground?
Thank you, Beat. That was really short and to the point. जो 5 मिनट से ज़्यादा बोलेगा उसको गुलाब मिलेगा. So अगर आपको गुलाब चाहिए तो आप ज़्यादा बोले. But our request is, because there's lunch on the other side of this. Okay, so we have Dipta next.
Okay, congratulations to Jaguri, and I want to say that I do share a history with the 80s when I was a young college student, and I joined in on the Sudha Goyal campaign to be part of the Om Swaha play, and I remember doing a signature campaign for 3 months with Gauri and with Malika and a lot of other people. So yeah, there is a shared history. And that space that feminists created for young people, and I hope we can keep creating that for each other. जब मुझे बोला गया कि आप बोलिए 30 साल काम करने के बाद और आप शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में काम करते हैं तो बहुत मुश्किल है कि आप इसको संक्षिप्त में करें, तो मैं बहुत जल्दी से 3 शब्दों को लूँगी, क्योंकि एक तरह से शब्द जब मैंने बैठ के सोचा इसके बारे में तो मुझे लगा कि एक्चुअली शब्द मेरे अतीत, मेरे काम और आज भी मेरे लिए बहुत महत्व रखते हैं। सबसे पहले इसलिए क्योंकि मैं शिक्षा में काम करती हूँ और पहला शब्द जो मेरा है वो है साक्षरता। साक्षरता पर मैंने काफ़ी काम किया है और इसका मायने क्या था। तो एक शब्द बहुत एक लंबी दुनिया और एक लंबा अनुभव खोलता है। और मुझे याद है कि 80 और 90 के दशक में 80 के दशक में हमारे आंदोलन में, फेमिनिस्ट मूवमेंट में ज़्यादा काम हिंसा और जैसे हम पहले भी सुन रहे थे हिंसा, स्वास्थ्य और पर हो रहा था, पर्यावरण पर भी काम था। और उसके बीच साक्षरता की बात करना बहुत ही अनसेक्सी था एंड नॉट एक्साइटिंग एट ऑल फॉर द मूवमेंट। पर हमको तो जुनून सवार था। एक्साइटिंग इसलिए भी नहीं था मूवमेंट के लिए क्योंकि एक बहुत बड़ा क्रिटिक था फेमिनिस्ट मूवमेंट का कि आप जब शिक्षा की बात करते हैं और जब स्टेट इस शिक्षा के प्रोग्राम पढ़ने लिखने को शुरू करता है तो उसका मुख्य ऑब्जेक्टिव है कि एक आदर्श महिला को गढ़ना और महिलाओं को डोमेस्टिकेट करना और उनको एक पेट्रियार्की के ढांचे में एक नई मॉडर्न वुमन को क्रिएट करना। तो हमको इस साक्षरता पर क्यों काम करना है? और ये इनविजिबलाइज करता है महिलाओं का अपना ज्ञान, उनका ओरल ट्रेडिशन, ये सब क्रिटिक्स थे, पर फिर भी हमको ये जुनून सवार था क्योंकि हमें लगता था कि शिक्षा से, साक्षरता से कुछ एक पिटारा खुलने वाला है। और वो क्या पिटारा है? तो मुझे लगता है कि फ्रॉम वेरी बोरिंग थिंग्स वी स्टक अराउंड विद साक्षरता। पहले तो एक साक्षरता अभियान भी हुआ था, मैमुना उसकी हिस्सा है। बहुत एक्साइटमेंट थी, पर वो 4-5 साल में वो एक तरह के चढ़ाव पर आया और फिर वो उतरा। लेकिन ये साक्षरता शब्द से हमारे लिए, हम तो डटे रहे, अगले 10 साल तक हम उस पर काम करते रहे, प्राइमर बनाना। और मैं अपने अनुभव, कई तरह के अनुभव है, पर आज जिन शब्दों के साथ मैं शेयर करूँगी वो बुंदेलखंड में आदिवासी, दलित और ग्रामीण गरीब महिलाओं के साथ जो काम हुआ है उसके संदर्भ में मैं बात कर रही हूँ। तो हम लिटरेसी कैंप्स करते थे, अल्फ़ाबेट कार्ड्स बनाते थे और करिकुलम बनाते थे। लेकिन इस काम को करते करते कई तरह के अनुभव और ज्ञान के बारे में बातें निकली। हमने एक प्राइमर बनाया, बांदा की बत्तियाँ, और महिला डाकिया क्रिएट हुआ उसके उसी प्रक्रियाओं से, और फिर धीरे धीरे खबर लहरिया। तो साक्षरता से काम करने से एक तरह से मुझे लगता है कि हमको एक नया तरीका मिला महिलाओं की ज़िंदगी में एक एंट्री करने का। और उसमें जो मुख्य चीज़ थी कि हम केवल अब उनसे इशू बेस्ड बात नहीं कर रहे थे, हम वायलेंस, हिंसा, एक्सेस पर बात नहीं कर रहे थे। धीरे धीरे जैसे लगातार हम समूहों में, ग्रुप्स में ये शिक्षा का, साक्षरता का काम करते रहे, उनकी दुनिया एक नए तरीके से खुलने लगी। उनके रिश्ते, उनकी स्पेसेस, उनकी आर्किटेक्चरल स्पेसेस, उनके अनुभव, उनकी छोटी छोटी रोज़मर्रा की वो बातें। और मुझे लगता है कि धीरे धीरे ये शब्द जो प्राइमर के शब्द थे वो फ्रेजेस में बदल गए, और प्राइमर्स में अब फ्रेजेस आने लगी बांदा की बत्तियाँ में, जैसे कि किमरिया धरा दूध या फिर चल भौजी बीही तोड़ी। तो ये जो फ्रेजेस थे ये औरतों के अपने अनुभवों से बहुत एक ताकतवर रूप से जुड़े हुए थे। उनकी चिट्ठियाँ, पूर्णिमा ने बहुत उस पर काम किया जो यहाँ पर है। जिसमें उनकी उम्मीदें, डिज़ायर्स, होप्स, डिमांड्स और ऑफ कोर्स उनका दर्द भी उसमें था। बहुत तरह की बातें भी होने लगी कि हम किस भाषा में, बहुत हीटेड डिस्कशंस थी कि हम किस भाषा को सीखेंगे, किस भाषा को लिखेंगे, हम बुंदेली में लिखेंगे, हम हिंदी में लिखेंगे, किस चीज़ को बुंदेली में लिखेंगे, किस चीज़ को हिंदी में लिखेंगे। और ये जो एक नई पहचान लेकर महिलाएं अब निकल रही थी, ये न्यूली मिंटेड आइडेंटिटी एज अ साक्षर औरत, इसके साथ हम क्या करने वाले हैं, हम कहाँ जाने वाले हैं, अपने गांव में क्या बात करने वाले हैं, हम किसको बात बताने वाले हैं, ये अपने बारे में नई बातें, कौन सी बातें अब हम जानना चाहते हैं, और हम कौन सी बातें पढ़ना चाहते हैं, और हम कौन सी बातें लिखना चाहते हैं। ये सब बातों से निकला वो पूरा अनुभव कि हाँ, हम महिला डाकिया अपने अपने कामों में लेंगे। दूसरा शब्द है सशक्तिकरण। मुझे लगता है कि जैसे जैसे औरतों ने शब्दों पर ग्रेटर कंट्रोल एक्सपीरियंस किया और उनको एक ग्रेटर अथॉरिटी मिली, उनकी वॉइस इमर्ज हुई, और राइटिंग एक तरह से केवल एक रेजिस्टेंस नहीं था, इट वॉज नॉट जस्ट कन्फ्रंटिंग पावर, बट इट वॉज फॉर जनरेटिंग न्यू कॉन्वर्सेशंस एंड मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंटली क्रिएटिंग अ न्यू सेल्फ। एंड आई थिंक ये एक नया सेल्फ का जो कंस्ट्रक्शन था वो बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग था। एक कमरे में, मैं आपको बता नहीं सकती कितना एक्साइटिंग है कमरे में बैठकर महिलाओं को बहस करते हुए, लिखते हुए, अपने लेख पढ़ते हुए एक दूसरे को, दिस को प्रोडक्शन of writing and knowledge is really, really exciting because it produces a new idea of self within that group. और वो मैंने देखा, वो solidarities जो emerge हुई और desire जो emerge हुई to imagine new ways of being. It was not, I want to be in a room of my own. It was not Virginia Woolf. It was, we are together in this room and we, through our conversation, our writing, हम ये एक नया self क्रिएट कर रहे हैं। और उससे उन्होंने अपने आप को इमेजिन किया एज इलस्ट्रेटर्स, एज जर्नलिस्ट्स, एज स्क्रिप्ट प्ले राइटर्स, एज लीडर्स ऑफ ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस, एज क्रिएटिंग न्यू कलेक्टिव्स एंड संगठन्स एंड क्रिएटिंग न्यू ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस। तो ये एक इमर्ज हुआ, और मुझे लगता है कि ये जो आई डोंट वांट टू एयर ब्रश इट, इट वाज नॉट इजी, इट वाज टफ, there were crises, there were fights, there were fallouts, because आप इस अपने नए सेल्फ को क्रिएट करने के लिए जाति, धर्म, आपकी गरीबी, वो सब आपके साथ रहता है, आपका परिवार भी आपके साथ रहता है। तो उसके बीच में अपने आप को एक नए तरीके से गढ़ना, अपने आप को, वो एक तरह से एक प्रोसेस मैंने विटनेस किया इन दिस जर्नी ऑफ नॉलेज क्रिएशन। तीसरा शब्द मैं छोड़ रही हूँ क्योंकि टाइम नहीं है। Okay, I'm so glad people are intrigued. Yeah. अगले एपिसोड में in the new liberal world इंतज़ार करें। तीसरा शब्द है समझौता, और जो मैंने DOV में आज पिछले 2 साल से जिस पे काम किया है, वो एक शब्द पे जिस पे मैं शेयर करना चाहती थी, डिक्शनरी वायलेंस, बट लेटर।
थैंक यू सो मच दीप्ता। हम समझौता की बात, दूसरा जो सवाल आएगा उसमें हम दीप्ता को रिक्वेस्ट करेंगे। मीना, योर टर्न।
हेलो, व्हेन यू वर टॉकिंग अबाउट ब्रिजेस, अच्छा ये हिंदी विंदी नहीं आता, ओके, सो इंग्लिश में ही होगा, लिटिल बिट हिंदी होगा, साउथ इंडियन है भाई, ओके। सो दिस ब्रिज दैट यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट, मुझे लगता है कि विमेन ही तो है नहीं हम लोग, वी आर नॉट ओनली विमेन, वी ऑल आर इनिशियल फाइट्स वेयर आर वी नॉट विमेन। एंड कैसा है ना कि यू डोंट अग्री, यू आर नॉट, आई मीन यू आर नॉट अ गुड वुमन, सो यू आर नॉट अ वुमन, यू आर नॉट अ गुड फेमिनिस्ट, सो आई लॉस्ट माई फेमिनिस्ट हुड ऑल्सो इन दिस होल ड्रामा। Like people started saying, हाँ, she's not a feminist, you know, she's working with sex workers, तो ये feminist ही नहीं है. So, you know, like women were losing their womanhood, I lost my feministhood. That's knowledge. Okay, and then, and the other story, of course, I'm a storyteller, so you're going to listen to stories in my 5 minutes. So what happened? Why did this whole thing of we are not women? So there's this woman called Rashmi Shukla, who's today the top cop in Maharashtra.
And this woman, we went to her, and we were talking about, sex workers issues. And she just looked at all these women we're a big group of women. I mean, we're gone as a big delegation, and she says, I don't think you're women. She actually told us that straight. And then, of course, sex workers, no, uta ke dikha de, was their immediate reaction. And I was like, dikha de, let her know, ki utha ke dikha dete hain. But the truth is that that is the space we were coming from in the sex worker rights movement. And it had lots of negative impacts on us as people working with women. So that's one whole issue. And then there is this feminist versus the sex worker space that we're also, we were grappling with. Kyunki this is the epitome of patriarchy, you all are catering to men, and, all this discussion. It's violence per se. And my problem was that how do you deal with violence within sex work if you say all of sex work is violence? Because that's the exploitative practices we were seeing, the violence that we were seeing. We couldn't deal with that because everywhere it was that, you know what, this has to be abolished and this need not be dealt with. So we were starting from ground zero, and therefore all the knowledge, and then when people are talking about Sakshar, most of the women we work with don't know how to read and write. And we're like, PKI, you don't know how to read and write, we don't need to teach you ABC. What we'll do is put everything, in fact, I think Jagori was talking about this morning, about doing everything through illustrations. So can you imagine, we were using Kama Sutra also. Because we were trying to teach people safe sex, no? So safe sex, man, you know how stupid we are, no? I mean, really, non-sex workers, man, I'm also a non-sex worker, but I can tell you, we are terrible people. So here it was, government of Maharashtra said, client negotiation strategies sikhana hai. And of course, I took this long list and went to the community and said, aap logon ko client negotiation strategies sikhana hai. And I remember Aprao Marshi turned around and said, kitne log ke saath soya tu? In her typical, because she thought I was from Mumbai, no, short hair and everything. So they used to speak to me in Hindi, in the Maharashtrian Hindi. And I said, what do you mean? So she said, what will you teach me about clients? Do you have any idea about clients? Why do you think you have, just because you can speak 2 words of English, you can actually teach me about clients? I'll teach you about clients. You tell me what HIV is, how it is spread, what needs to be done. Because we are like that. We are assuming that there is no knowledge. And that, I think, is where that was the biggest learning for us in terms of knowledge production. We did not know. We do not know. We have no idea. And I think just learning that was a huge shift in our way of dealing with communities and the issues that they were coming up with. The other space about is also, even simple things like STD. Glaxo had given us these slides. Chalo, jaake, we will show them slides. And these women were sitting on there and say, Anita has this, so-and-so has that. They knew all the STD, manifestations we were showing them. What they didn't know is what we had to teach them was that every organism is different for each of these. And so this one penicillin shot that this quack is giving you will not work. But for us to reach till there, took a long time. We had all these fancy doctors from Bombay coming and teaching women STDs, which they did not need. So how do you produce knowledge that actually makes sense to the community? And that's when this whole idea that collectivization is the mantra. If we have to create any knowledge, I was just telling Prabha that, the whole CEDAW book, because we were doing CEDAW, the whole book is in illustrations. And not only that, National Network of Sex Workers works with 8 languages. So it's in 8 languages. Because how do you explain what CEDAW is if you have to fight at the international level, right? So I'm just saying that knowledge production is something that has to be rooted with the communities who you are so-called producing this knowledge for. Thank you.
Shampa and then Jaya.
Namaskar. I think I echo what Meena and Beena said in the way when you are producing knowledge, like thing is for whom you are producing it and it's by whom is the main concern. So for me, I'll talk a little bit about my personal journey because when I started working on disability issues, I saw myself as an outsider. I was a professional who was working on disability, and in the course of my life, I became a caregiver, full-time caregiver of a person with disability, and then after my own mental illness started, became a very prominent concern of my life. I do myself identify as a person with psychosocial disabilities, so it's a journey, and disability is something, it's not like an identity, it's not like caste. Like I'm born in a upper caste Bengali family, and it cannot change. It's that identity doesn't change, but the disability identity can change also. And it's also not that the issues that we are talking about, because disability is also very, like it encompasses everyone. Like it's part of all other movements, because we have like general women who are disabled, we have Dalit people who are disabled, we have sex workers who have faced disability at different point of time. So it's not like you just, this is one identity which will remain stagnant. That is something very important to understand. I think the knowledge production work, researches that we do is important, because firstly, the government do not keep any data on us, on persons with disabilities. It's just, we just have a census data, which is like years and years ago, and of course, these intersections are never mentioned in any government data. So, so you don't know like how many, when you're talking about Indian disability movement, so how many people you are talking about, or, you know, so there is like no information from state level. So, so for many of us who are trying to build up the knowledge on disability, it's not like proper research kind of thing. So it's more like writing down maybe just 5 case studies, and it becomes research, because we don't have the information. And it's also not that disabled people are living in one particular area, so it's like all over. So, and also disability includes so many kinds of categories. So it can be a physical impairment, it can be a visual impairment, it can be a hearing impairment, it can be intellectual disability, it can be psychosocial disability. So this varied knowledge also, it's to bring it together, it itself is a challenge for even people like us. So for us, what we try to do is to write down as much as possible in the form of case studies, maybe in the form of like oral narratives, and it's also very intersecting knowledge. So we have seen, particularly recently, a lot of cases coming up where mothers who gave birth to children with disabled. So many women are coming up and talking about domestic violence. You know, so it's disability is not only about one person, it's also the whole family is getting affected, because it's like giving birth to a daughter is a negative experience of for so many of our women. So being giving birth to a disabled child is, again, it's like it's your fault and you're supposed to move away from your family. So those kind of so it starts from family, and then of course a state where in India we still do not have, of course legally we are supposed to get both option of inclusive education and special education, but special schools are there, of course, in few cities. Rural area, there will be no special school, and inclusion is it's like a dream kind of thing. It's not happening. Yeah. So lot of things that we are trying to write down is also, I think it's very basic kind of thing. So it's not, and I'll not say that we have been able to achieve a lot if you think of the vastness of the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Jaya, since you're going last and since you're the host, maybe I can press you to keep it short.
4 minutes?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try. Yeah, I never thought I'll get scared to get a rose. Okay, but Jagori also shares some of the concerns that all these 4 friends have talked about. Particularly the difference between the researcher and the subject. And some of those dilemmas are never ending. But at least during my time, I don't know about earlier times what discussions have happened. But during my time, there have been 2-3 researchers, and we discussed within the team that yes, that difference, however much you try, that difference stays. So what do we do? And to that, my answer as a team leader, my answer was that, since we come from a privileged background of having had mainstream education, having learned some of those research tools, it is our responsibility to decode, to analyze what we go and see in the field and try to represent it in the best manner that is possible, in the best ethical way that is possible. I'll give you one example. We did, last year we did one big study with women domestic workers on their occupational health concerns and safety in their workplaces. Now this area is now under research. Ours is probably the first study with a sample size of more than 500. And we knew that there will be some women who may share about the sexual harassment or violence or assault that they might have faced in some of the homes. And so we were thinking what could be their reactions. Some may break down, for some just the question may be a trigger. And so how will we deal in an ethical way? We'll come back with our data, but what happens to that woman who may undergo that trauma again? And so we decided that our researcher team will be accompanied by one member from our violence intervention team who are counselors. And we'll tell that woman that there is this counseling available. We provided them numbers. There were very few cases, but we tried to take that care. So, one has to be aware of these things and one has to try best to the best of our abilities. But sometimes I feel if we think only about dilemmas, then, it becomes it is very paralyzing, or that may be a wrong word, very debilitating, I would say. You have asked 2-3 questions in your first, so I want to give you one example. And Jagori's philosophy, which has stayed for all these 40 years. One of the first research that Jagori took up was on single women. And so it was a combination of building a new conceptual category. And Jagori always believes it's not research for research. Yes, we are telling her story and adding to, many stories in that her story, but there will be an intervention also. So we won't stop only at doing research, coming up with data and analysis, but we'll think of interventions. And so this single women's research led to formation of Ekal Aurat Mahila Sangathan Collective of single women in working class settlement of Dakshinpuri. This was in 80s. Later on it may have fizzled out, but my point is that we have been always saying that we will be doing action research. Now I gave example of this occupational health research, and here also what we found that unions have preoccupations with basically wages and saving the jobs. So sometimes, they do not take up issues of sexual harassment or even occupational health. Even if a woman falls in that house and fractures her leg, and the niyokta, as they are called in the law, employers don't take any responsibility for the treatment. Unions generally don't want to go into any confrontationist mode. So most of the times the woman ends up bearing that cost and all that side effects alone. So to make occupational health concerns as an integral part of their work is one challenge. But Jagori thinks that we should continue with it. So we are trying to build, those kind of dialogues with health movement, with other organizations and unions that work with women domestic workers. With our findings, we held one national consultation, but several other meetings. And in Delhi bill, the proposed bill, there is no provision about this. But now collectively people have agreed. So sometimes you get success, sometimes you don't. But I think you have to continue. I think 4 minutes? Yeah. I'll stop.
Yeah. Thank you. ये जो पहला सवाल था, I think the first question itself has dug up some very difficult territory for us. We've questioned what is knowledge. उसको भी unpack कर पाए हम. ये knowledge कौन produce कर रहा है, कौन research करने जाता है, किस पे research करता है. That very uneven hierarchy that continues to stay. What tools are we using? Identity की बात शोम्पा ने करी, and how that is always in flux. I think in the first session somebody said, I think it was you, Shiba, about being intersubjective, about closing that gap, and that's really what's most troubling about research or photography or anything that's so intrusive or invasive. And then finally what Jaya said about research being open-ended. उसकी एक afterlife है, वो चलती ही रहेगी, वो छप जाएगी एक case study या एक report बन के, but really it's always a living document. My next sawal is going to be very specific. I have a specific question for each one of you. And again, the time limit stays. So let's try and be short if we can. And I'll go in the same alphabetical order. So it's Beena first. So Beena, your work, among many other things, it actually brings up very decisively. Beena's work is on budgets and economic power. And imagine the budget as knowledge production and Dalit communities. And we rarely see the budget as knowledge production, right, when we speak of research and knowledge production. But it's such a vital portal into and from knowledge. Budget is both. That is knowledge about policy and policymakers' attitudes, unki priorities kya hain vis-a-vis the structurally marginalized. So please talk to us about any shifts that may have happened in your advocacy about budgetary analysis via Dalit lens.
Thanks so much. Actually, over the years, it has always been, even if within the community, budget and the understanding of budget and public policy has always been with men. So I remember, just to tell you a funny story, when I started talking about budgets and when I started going to ministries and, meeting officials, they just would look through me. And sometimes they just look here, hello, my face is here, talk to me here. Or they just, if there were two other colleagues, male colleagues, they would only be looking at the male colleague and talk to them, right? But I was probably doing the talking, I was explaining about the budgets, but they would just not consider that a Dalit woman is talking about a subject that, first of all, women don't even engage with, and secondly, a Dalit woman. And I remember once, right after the budgets come, we send SMS to all the many of the members of parliament to tell them, because many of them go on TV, so we give them the information by I think budget comes in the afternoon, and by evening, like 3-4 o'clock we give them. And I remember one of the members of parliament called me and he asked me this question. I was really shocked. He said that, is it you? I mean, do you know how to do this? Are you actually looking at the numbers? Do you know how to analyze it? And I said, I didn't know what to respond because for me it was a shock that I don't think he would have asked that if it was my male colleague who was sending those SMSs, right? Because it is a woman. And on top of that, somebody from the Dalit community who's actually doing this, that he was so shocked. And of course, I had to convince him that, yes, I know the numbers. I give the final approvals for the numbers that go out. But it was somewhere along the way, I think the shift of, there are still very few women engaged in budget and governance issues because it's always been a very male dominated space. And that's something that I wanted to break. Somebody in the video said about breaking walls. And I think we also have these walls in research, in the works that we do, because some things are almost always, women do, and some things it's always that men do. And if we're trying to break those stereotypes, I think it's very difficult, but also more difficult when they know where you're coming from. When they know that you're from a certain community, I think that is something that, it is still a difficult space, but I think that we as as women from different castes, from different locations, must also push each other. I think that is where the strength comes of collective, how do you say, I can't even get a word, but collectively moving forward to push women in sectors that are not really run by women.
Thank you, thank you. Thanks, Dina. And now on popular demand, Dipta, please speak of Samjhauta and then challenges.
So actually, I'll come to it in the end, but I just want to say, as somebody who's in education, learning, and what's the difference between learning and knowledge, and what does it mean to be feminist, and all of these questions. I'll just flag 2-3 things that I think are ways in which knowledge production happens on my experience of working in Nirantar. I think that one is that this whole issue of, it's not just an issue of who's the researcher, but if you work in communities with women, I think the very important part of it is the whole issue of meaning making. And words allow you, they are nodes of knowledge creation for me. And for us, they have been. And I think this meaning making means that it's not just that I, as the facilitator, is making meaning, it means that group is making meaning. And therefore, they have greater ownership of that knowledge. It becomes their knowledge. And when you work across standpoints, you work in this diverse kind of, because there is not just one caste, there are many, subcastes which are there. There are tribal, Dalit, or Muslim women. These multiple standpoints, negotiating through these standpoints together actually leads to a certain kind of ownership of that knowledge by the women themselves. And that's how I talked about earlier, that the production of a new self, a creative self, emerges in that thing. The other principle of knowledge creation, I think, which I've learned from Nirantar, and I give the example of the early child marriage study, which we call the ECM study, which really is, for me, stood out when I was thinking about it as deep listening, going back to the field. And the principle is that knowledge is like production is a loop. You go back, keep going back to the field, because you have to listen to things again and again, and maybe you may listen to them over time differently. And the fact of a sexuality lens coming into a very legalistic discourse or reformist discourse was quite radical. And I think that what the women and what the communities had to say, so a deep listening in terms of equally important. But the last that I want to say, and I talk about this whole idea of the word samjhauta, is that I think, and in TTE, in Third Eye, the work is in this digital moment where in a larger reality, education, social sciences being stripped of its space and location in universities. We are seeing what is happening. So when you are in that situation, how do we look at knowledge production today? And I think that one very important principle is that how do we start upsetting this digital idea of that we will put out stuff on the digital, and because technology provides a certain kind of power to people like us. How do we reimagine the field in the digital moment? And what is it that we can do where the people that we work with, the communities we work with, are not just consumers, but actually producers of knowledge? Because it's just becoming easier and easier to disseminate. Acha, ye bana do to disseminate. How do they get involved and how does their knowledge emerge? And I think that the work on the Dictionary of Violence is really going to that pivotal point of the caseworker who handles those cases on the ground, engages with family, community, structure, police, themselves and the world to actually start exploring what do these words now mean to them. These are feminist caseworkers. They've been through our feminist trainings. But how do they look at it? What is the meaning they have made of it? And is that just, are we there going only for narratives? Are we only going there for case studies, or can they become part of a process where they themselves are creating something? So I think we moved over a period of a year from listening to each other, doing this collectively, to actually creating a Shabdkosh, a dictionary, where they created the syntax. They identified what is the adjective, what is the verb, what is the way in which the noun. So, you know, what is samjhauta? Is it a soda? Is it ghutan? Adjective. Is it staying on? Is it, staying between two worlds? These are categories that the syntax that they set out. That is the way that they theorize their experience. And I think that it's important because this plenitude of meaning. So you're not just claiming a word. You're not just transforming a word. You're actually expanding a word. And you're looking at the plenitude of meanings that that one word has, and what it strips and reveals of the complex reality within which we do our feminist work. So I think it's really important to think of people as not just, we are just identifying the issues, but to actually immerse yourself in a very, very embodied way. And I think the digital allowed for that, because they could explore their own experiences of humiliation and also of power. All of that gamut, and there was no, and also we were dealing with the big feminist other, which is that, can we say this? Can we say this? Can I share this experience? Because it's not, in the feminist rhetoric and vocabulary of gender-based violence. Can I talk about why I'm staying on in a relationship that is violent, or how am I staying on in a relationship of violence? So I think expanding is, for me, very, very critical in terms of what it can do in terms of creating a more embodied sense of issues. Here, for example, in gender-based violence. Yeah, thank you.
Meena, moving on to you, in your work among the sex worker movement, among the feminist movement, and they're coming together to produce knowledge. Talk to us about the most difficult subject, which is the differences. The differences that emerged, were they resolved? If they were resolved, were connections built? Did dialogues happen? Are they still happening to produce knowledge that comes from the ground? All of these collective voices.
So there is the feminist speak and the sex worker speak. They're two different spaces, actually. And people like us who are in the middle are struggling with them on both levels, frankly. But just, taking on this whole thing of knowledge, the truth is, if you come from a very marginalized space, you are not, the assumption is that you don't know how to create that knowledge, right? So when sex workers were speaking to feminists, the problem was that the feminists were not even accepting that what was being said, or that they have a voice, or that voice is a legitimate voice. And I'll give it to you in terms of research. There's this research that was done by us called Raided, where we were interested in finding out people who got raided and went into these homes, shelter homes, for about, more than 2 years, up to 5 years they can be in. And when they came out, we were asking them why they'd come back into sex work. Because the issue was, listen, now you've been raided, you've been rescued, you've been put into the shelter home, you've been taught all these stories. And so they were like, we were treated very well. We were given great khana. We were you know, a lot of this, what is this? Sewing, all this work they taught us with great love and affection. But when we came out, we couldn't make a living with it. And the families had created so much of debt that there's no way you can finish that debt doing sewing work, right? It was only sex workers and the enhancement of income that sex work provides, which is the reason why women felt that, you know, they'd gone back to it, though they had written and given all these stories. Story over here is not this. So we write up this research very fancily, peer-based it is, because the women themselves went and got all this really very important information for intervention, right? And peer reviewers, peer-based research, this is, peer reviewers said, no, we can't take this, we can't accept it as research. It's biased, it's pata nahi kya. We sent it everywhere. And it came back from everywhere, saying that, you know, this is not knowledge because it was created, or this is not research because it was created by sex workers themselves. Right, so I'm just saying that the pushback when you create this kind of knowledge is very high, because most of the journals we sent it to were run by feminists, by women we knew, right? The peer reviewers who came, who wrote, I mean, that's blind, but I know that many of them may have been from the feminist movement, but the impossible thing is you cannot create knowledge by yourself. That knowledge has to be created by outside entities who have all this education and blah, 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 which is important for the analysis. I'm not saying no, Manjima knows, she was part of our violence research at an international level. But the truth is that the women themselves, I mean, we work largely with female sex workers, we do with male and trans sex workers also, but our large group is female sex workers. It was impossible to get this published anywhere, you know. So I'm just saying that when you're looking at knowledge production, this non-sex worker presence is critical. It is when we decided that, okay, we'll do it together. This knowledge will be produced together. And we'll continue to do it because that's what we're committed to. So that, I think that's important, to know that, yes, we have the feminists, we have the non-sex workers, and we have the sex workers. And yes, it is a difficult space. It has to be negotiated.
Right.
And I don't think anybody is being non-sincere. I think everybody is very sincere. But the truth is that that negotiation space of power is like difficult.
Shampa, I have a similar question for you. There has been this gulf between the women's movement and the disability rights movement, sometimes working in silos, sometimes working together. What, in your opinion, has knowledge production, research, any coming together of voices, meaning making, where has it moved to, if it's moved in parts, in a staggered way?
I think we still work in silos, very honestly. I really don't think that, like, of course, few organizations, like someone like Jagori or some other organization, we try to include disability, but there are major differences in understanding from feminist perspective lives of disabled women sometimes, because disabled women are not supposed to get married, not supposed to become mothers, and that's what society wants them to be. So, and so many of the disabled women will say, I aspire to, my aspiration is to get married and become a mother. And the moment that person is saying that, the feminist groups is like, oh my God, you know, this is not my area. But we did a research on, because we have marriage incentive schemes for disabled people in 19 states of India. So we did a research, and we found that the moment I started talking about that there is marriage incentive scheme and we are doing, trying to do a study, I think many of, particularly the urban feminist groups told me, you see, this is not acceptable. This is just dowry given by state, and how can you like even think that this is a topic of research? And you go to a village in Bihar where there's someone who's unable to work because of polio, and she says that my demand from my government is to increase the marriage incentive, that money, because until and unless I get married, I will never get a sexual life, and I want to have sex, I want to have child. It's her reality, and it's a very different from what we think from feminist perspective, and I really don't think we have even reached a point where we are talking to each other. It's very like upar se kuch ho raha hai, but I don't think it's happening. Yeah.
Sure, thank you. Jaya, what about Jagori's collective knowledge production efforts? What lessons have you, if you have any lessons to share, or lesson, not lessons, in the interest of time?
Okay, lesson, challenge. मैं चैलेंज की बात करूं, अभी थोड़ा हिंदी में बात करना चाहूँगी, ठीक है? हमारी टीम में भी बहुत लोग हैं जो हिंदी शायद ज़्यादा पसंद करेंगे. तो एक जो चैलेंज मुझे दिख रहा है, एक्चुअली दो चैलेंजेस है. पहले के दौर में एक मूवमेंट के लिए काम करना एक संस्था के लिए पॉसिबल था. तो जैसे जागोरी ने, मुझे याद है कि वो भी आई थिंक 90s में कभी तो भी एक ट्रैफिकिंग पे मीटिंग किया था. दैट वाज प्रोबेबली द फर्स्ट मीटिंग ऑन दैट इशू, ट्रैफिकिंग ऑफ वीमेन एंड चिल्ड्रन. और फिर उसमें अलग अलग तरह के लोग जुड़ गए, मतलब सिर्फ नारीवादी संस्था नहीं, लेकिन ह्यूमन राइट्स के काम करने वाले लोग या ट्रैफिकिंग के मुद्दों पर काम करने वाले लोग. तो उस काम के लिए, लगातार काम करने के लिए तभी वो मुमकिन था, तभी फंडिंग का ढांचा कुछ अलग था. अभी जो है मैं देख रही हूँ कि प्रोजेक्ट मोड में चलते हैं हम, और जनरली किसी भी प्रोजेक्ट का लाइफ 3 साल, कभी कभी कोई अच्छा डोनर है तो 5 साल होता है. तो अगर जैसे मैंने उदाहरण दिया कि अगर हमको ऑक्यूपेशनल हेल्थ पे काम करना है, हमने तो ये काम किया, रिसर्च किया, हमारा डोमेस्टिक वर्कर्स के साथ काम लगातार चालू है, और भी जो, सॉरी मेरा भी बम्बईया हिंदी है, तो और भी जो संगठन है, खास करके दिल्ली लेवल के, जो विमेन डोमेस्टिक वर्कर्स के साथ काम करते हैं, उनके साथ हम जुड़े हैं. हम सारे आंदोलनों में इकट्ठे खड़े रहते हैं. लेकिन अगर ऑक्यूपेशनल हेल्थ पे लगातार हमें अगर काम करना है, तो अभी ये प्रोजेक्ट के बाद हमारे पास उसके लिए प्रोजेक्ट नहीं है. तो फिर इस काम का क्या किया जाए, ये सोचना पड़ता है, और कंटिन्यूसली वो एक प्रेशर है. दूसरा जो चैलेंज मुझे दिख रहा है, जागोरी का अगर आप देखेंगे, हिस्ट्री देखेंगे, उनके लिखित में स्ट्रैटेजीज देखेंगे, विजन मिशन देखेंगे, सारा कुछ देखेंगे, तो हमेशा से ही जागोरी जो भी कुछ खुद शुरू करती है, उसमें और 10 संगठनों को जोड़ने का प्रयास रहा है. कभी अकेले अकेले नहीं रहे हम. अब और छोटे छोटे ग्रुप्स, जैसे हम झारखंड में काम करते थे, छोटे ग्रुप्स के साथ जुड़े थे, और सेफ सिटीज़ का एजेंडा हम वहाँ लेकर के गए थे. और ना सिर्फ रांची सिटी, बट हजारीबाग और आसपास के कुछ इलाकों में भी काम होता था, क्योंकि वहाँ के ग्रुप्स वो करते थे. जागोरी से कुछ चीज़ें सीख के, सेफ्टी ऑडिट्स के बारे में सीख के. अब ये पार्टनरशिप्स अलाउड नहीं है. तो फिर जो ये एक स्पेस था, क्योंकि कभी कभी ये छोटे ग्रुप्स को ऐसे मुद्दों पर ना जानकारी मिलती है आसानी से, ना उनके कनेक्शंस होते हैं, तो उनको खुद को भी ये फंडिंग लाना मुश्किल होता है. फिर होता ये है कि जो एक इशू थोड़ा आगे गया था, वो पीछे आ जाता है. मुझे लगता है अभी टाइम खत्म हुआ. कैन आई रीड वन कोट फ्रॉम टोनी मॉरिसन? क्योंकि देखो, चैलेंजेस बोलते हैं, या आज का दौर तो सबके लिए ही मतलब कभी कभी बहुत डिप्रेसिंग है, बट एज सोशल एक्टिविस्ट, एज फेमिनिस्ट, वी कांट अफोर्ड टू गेट डिप्रेस्ड. तो इसके लिए मुझे ये कोट, और वो नॉलेज के लिए भी बड़ा इम्पोर्टेंट है. Toni Morrison, the famous author, Nobel Prize winner, she says, "There is no time for despair, no place for self-pity, No need for silence, no room for fear. We speak, we write, we do language. That is how civilizations heal. I know the world is bruised and bleeding, and though it is important not to ignore its pain, it is also critical to refuse to succumb to its malevolence. Like failure, chaos contains information that can lead to knowledge, even wisdom, like art.
Jaya, Manjima, we have 5 minutes. Should we move on to the third one or wrap up? Yes, 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 we'll do that. तो आखिरी सवाल फॉरवर्ड लुकिंग कि अभी तक हमने बहुत चैलेंजेस की बात करी, बहुत डिलेमास रहे हैं, पर इन सब के चलते अगर एक उदाहरण हम सब दे पाएँ कि आगे हम ये जो अनफिनिश्ड बिजनेस है जो अभी तक हम नहीं कर पाए या जितने हमने चैलेंजेस लिस्ट आउट करे, हम रिसर्च को यूज़ करते हुए आगे फेमिनिस्ट सॉलिडारिटीज़ को कैसे बिल्ड करने की कोशिश करेंगे? कुछ अलग करने की सोच रहे हैं, कुछ एजेंडा पे है? अगर एक एक उदाहरण एक एक मिनट में दे पाएँ तो सेशन हम समय पे समाप्त कर पाएंगे.
Thank you, Amrita. I think that de-Brahmanization of resources, whether it be resources, whether it be, academics, literature, whatever knowledge that we produce, cannot be the responsibility only of the marginalized. I think that is where collectivization is so important, that we collectively deal with it, we collectively look forward. I think that is really important. And my second point would be that in everything that we do, I think it's important to see whose agency it is that we are enabling. And I think that is so critical to us today, because we cannot continue to work as business as usual. Maybe 30 years ago, we didn't know better, but today we know better. We have so many good models to look around. So I think it's important that even in knowledge production, we ensure and we need to look at whose agency we are building. And if it is the agency of, somebody from the most marginalized, how their agency is being enabled is really important to look at.
Okay, I just made this point earlier, but I think that the issue of knowledge production is really, really important for us in the next decade, because with the collapse of the public education system, we are going to see the sort of making of minds of curriculum in political ways. And I think that we need to look for, and what I'm really interested in is looking at ways in which online, offline, we can bring people together, build solidarities, so that there is a more public-facing nature of knowledge that we produce. Collaboratively, collectively, I completely agree, not in our own little spaces, but what is that going to be? I think we really do need to think very seriously. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to speak about two things. One is decriminalization, because only if you criminalize can you decriminalize. Everybody is constantly saying, what is the decriminalization that the sex worker rights are demanding? It is because all the criminalization has to be stopped for us to achieve any kind of freedom. And so therefore, decriminalization means just stop criminalization. That's all. So that's one. And the second thing is knowledge. I mean, by the communities. Here we are, the Western sex workers, the Western communities have been telling us that sex workers sell sex. And the women I work with is, hey, Vikaita, kuni sanitlo? Which is, who's telling us, what do you mean by selling sex? I mean, how can you sell sex? Was the answer. And so they came up with their own definition of sex work, which is provision of sexual services. A doctor provides services, lawyer provides services, sex worker provides sexual services, masseur provides massage services. That's it. Thank you.
I think it's important to understand that fighting patriarchy and ableism has to go hand in hand. These are not separate issues. The moment we understand that, I think the work is easier. I mean, that's the only way to go.
Jaya.
Unfinished business, having a national legislation for protection and rights of domestic workers that will have a serious clauses on occupational health and safety. That is unfinished business. And second unfinished business is taking forward our agenda on shelter homes, creation of right-based gender-sensitive shelters, and taking this message to the state to have this kind of shelters within their system.
Thank you. I congratulate each one of you. I think you all deserve the rose. We have finished 2 minutes after 1. So excellent. Clap for all of them. And learning from them, I'm just going to wrap this up in one sentence. I think feminist solidarity is both the source and the destination for knowledge production. With that, I'm going to invite Preeti, Shalini, Lakshmi, Saurabh, Shaini, and Sunita. They want to gift you little things. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for this session. Preeti, Meena Seshu. Okay. Preeti, Lakshmi, Saurabh, Shaini, Sunita. Niharika.
And Amrita. Incredible timekeeping.
Thank you.
Incredible. And for the moderation, yes. Thank you. Fabulous panel. Such a thoughtful, wise panel. Thank you, everyone. We'll go into lunch now. We'll be back before 2. 5 minutes to 2. We'll be back in the room, please.